Coming up on episode 92 of the Behind the Back podcast, Ben and I break down this NBA Finals and how crazy it's been. OKC on the verge of winning the title, one game away. Tyrese Haliburton is hurt. Do we think the Pacers have a shot? Stay tuned. We listen to talk about that. And then we pivot on to a Sacramento Kings conversation centered around the Desmond Bane trade and Kevin Durant. So stay tuned for that and what the potential offseason options are for the Sacramento Kings. So with that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your host. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet. Reds, Ben, it's been a week. You had to, your birthday was last week. You did a little trip. How was that, brother? How you doing?
Trip was great. San Francisco weather is pretty unbeatable a lot of the time. So it was gorgeous out there, 70 degrees at best, at most. It was a great trip. Got to see the homies, got to hang out, did some fun things. And the birthday itself, got some deep dish pizza, which was my first time ever. I don't think that it's going to top a regular old pizza pie for me. But deep dish is pretty good, and it was a good birthday, so no complaints. But I'm happy to be back.
Heck yeah, I love that for you. And then again, for all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day this weekend. Hope everyone had a good time and treated multiple barbecues, all that fun stuff. So you guys heard in the intro, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So last time we chatted about the NBA Finals, it was before the start of the series, and we were confident in the Oklahoma City Thunder. As much as I was pulling for Indiana when it came down to when we were making our decisions, I caved and bent the knee to the OKC Thunder. And then game one happened. Tyrese Haliburton hits a game winner again, which was crazy. And we'll talk about bits and pieces of that. And I wanted to say after game one, I truly did feel, I was like, oh, this is for real. Like, okay, we're going to get things going. But I think a lot of the reaction after game one was, oh, it's just a game. And then OKC wins game two. Game three happens. Indy wins their first game at home and they're up 2-1. And everyone's like, whoa, hold up. And then the narrative around this series was like, Indiana can win this thing, dude. And then obviously OKC wins game four pretty convincingly. And then Monday night happened. It was Monday, I believe. And Tyrese Haliburton, and I guess it could have been beforehand, but it was the most noticeable in game five. He was dealing with a calf strain, and OKC took care of business. It got a little close there in the fourth where they were down 18. TJ McConnell went on an epic run, and we'll talk about him because he deserves a lot of flowers in this series, but they cut it down to 2, and then OKC just beats the brakes off them and takes care of business in game five. So now OKC is up 3-2, 1 win away from the finals. You had talked about it pretty confidently going into it that you're like, OKC is going to do it, take care of it in 5-6. We're at game 6. Did this series kind of go how you thought it was going to go?
Yeah, with the exception to Tyrese hitting one game winner, this series is exactly how I expected it to. I mean, it would have been 4-1 as was predicted, right? Obviously, game one went the way it did. It was a phenomenal shot. It was a phenomenal game. Mm-hmm. This series has been a ton of fun to watch. Mad respect to the Pacers. They're not out of this by any stretch. You can't at this point count the Pacers out of any game. But you really do have to hand them their flowers because this was going to be a very, very, very tough series for them, even fully healthy, because of all the reasons we talked about with OKC and just how dominant they have been all season long and being 12 men deep. So, it's been a blast to watch. The Tyrese injury for me is unfortunate because as much as I want to see OKC close this thing out tomorrow night, the reality is I don't want to see them close it out and then hear not excuses, but hear conversations of what if he was healthy? Because it's like, Yeah, I mean, it was a close series while he was healthy. So, by all means, let's see what it would have looked like if he was fully healthy for all the games. I still think OKC would have won this next game, but I don't know. It begs that interesting conversation.
For sure. And I guess the I actually have had, like you, a lot of fun watching this series. It's gone a lot better than I anticipated. It's been really high quality basketball. The intensity's there. It's been back and forth. You're getting the game winners. You're getting the tough closeouts in the fourth quarter, big plays. Um, but yeah, no, this injury, now knowing that Tyrese is significantly less than 100%. I think that when people talked about this injury for Tyrese, there was an inkling that he could have already been hurt going into this, and then it just kind of got worse. So he's a game time decision. He is going to play by every
Yeah.
by any stretch of the imagination. That's what he's been saying. He obviously is going to trust the doctors, but I think at the same time, it's potentially your last opportunity, and it's in front of the home fans. I think if you can go out there and just contribute, that's going to be the difference. And that was the issue in game 5, was he was a non-factor whatsoever. And even before he got hurt, it just didn't feel like he could get his rhythm going. And this series in general, he hasn't been that great. I think he's only averaging like 15 points and 7 assists. So
Yeah.
like relative to his, numbers when he's playing his best, OKC's just done a good job of making things hard for him. And I do think that we are seeing what happens when Indiana gets thrown off the rhythm. And obviously they're still pesky, and they were right in it the whole time. And there's been plenty of stretches in the finals where Tyrese is out and they're playing even better.
Right.
So, and that begged the question in game 5 was, TJ McConnell was just having this unbelievable run in the third quarter, and they took him out 4 minutes into the fourth. And there was, the question of like, what if you just rode TJ McConnell the rest of the way, or at least even a little longer, and see what you could have gotten? And I did think that was interesting. But overall, this series has been incredible. And I think I want to pivot over to OKC, because we shouldn't be this long into the pod not mentioning the team that's up 3-2,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of business. Shai's looking like an MVP. Jalen Williams had a signature game, and these two are kind of just showing off in a way that they're kind of proving to be the potential next best duo in the entire NBA, if they haven't already gotten to that point now because of these finals. So what has really impressed you about OKC during this final so far?
I don't want to be that guy, but at the same time, I'm going to kind of say it. And it's not to say that I'm not impressed, but I'm also not surprised by what OKC is doing. I mean, this was why I said 4-1 OKC. This is why I took OKC to win the finals starting the playoffs. They're doing what they've done all season long. They're doing what they've done all postseason long. Nothing has changed for me. So I'm not shocked, and I'm not, blown away by what OKC is doing, especially in the finals here. They go into every single game with their game plan, and they are never pulled out of their game plan. They are sometimes beaten, but they're not going to be the ones who switch up their game plan to try and, counteract what's happening on the other side. The closest thing we saw to it was game 1, when they couldn't hit a 3 to save their lives, and they started running pick and rolls with J-Dub and Shai. And it was like, well, this is kind of random, but it started working, right? And they found ways to, kind of adapt to it and find their rhythm. But as the series has gone on, as every series goes on, you find your rhythm. You find your rhythm offensively, and that's exactly what OKC has done. And since we've seen them really find their rhythm after, about game 3, it's been tough to see, any chance really that the Pacers have of competing offensively with this OKC team. So what I'm really, I guess, surprised with and blown away with is the development of J-Dub throughout the playoffs. I think they've called on his name all season long, and he's been there. And he's been a really good player all season long. But he has taken that extra step, and it's happened in the playoffs on the biggest stages. And that's something any young player dreams of. And that's something that any organization that drafts you and any fan base that is cheering you on from the start of your rookie campaign dreams of. This is exactly what OKC envisioned when they drafted him. They wanted him to step up in these kind of moments. They wanted him to be a key, not just a role player, but a key contributor to this team. And that's exactly what he's doing. So my props for him, my props to this team go to J-Dub, especially in this series. I think he's shouldered a lot of load. He's had a lot to deal with. Indiana guards are awesome. And the way that they're able to move around, they exhaust you. I mean, we look at Jalen Brunson in the last series. He was gassed by the end of that series. They were running him all over the place. And yet you're watching Shai. He's getting tired. J-Dub's absolutely getting tired too. But you're watching these guys chase him around, and J-Dub is shouldering every single load, offensively and defensively. So I really like what I'm seeing from him. I really wish the Kings could somehow have gotten him. But the cards didn't fall that way. Shout out OKC. They're in a really, really good position right now.
No, absolutely. And, Jalen Williams has done everything that you could have asked him for, especially when, SGA needed help. Like when there's times where SGA's shot wasn't falling and he wasn't able to make that same impact offensively. And Jalen Williams was really able to shoulder the load. I do think that, they're speaking of how Indy plays and, getting teams tired. I think game 3, game 4, there were times where you could feel like Indiana was truly wearing OKC down. And I think that's where everyone kind of switched a little bit and felt like, oh, wow, Indy is doing things that can convince you that they can pull this series out because OKC feels like they're at the end of the rope. And then but you talked about this going in, OKC has faced adversity time and time again. And when it looks like they've taken a big punch in the gut, they respond and always get their get back. And I had talked about it when they went up 2-1. I was like, Indiana hasn't lost back-to-back games since March. And OKC also has not lost back-to-back games in quite some time in these playoffs. So it's been impressive. And I do, as much as good as Jalen Williams has played and as good as these, Alex Caruso and Chet Holmgren's been fine. We'll talk about him. I have, a little stat on him. Offensively, he hasn't been the best, but defensively, he's been a rock for them. And having the guards that they have, you're having big Lou Dort games where he's hitting threes all over the place. Aaron Wiggins is coming in and just hitting shots. Isaiah Joe. You're seeing the guys, the complementary pieces do their jobs. And that was the part where if Indiana really wanted to stay in this, you needed the McConnells and the Matherins and Nembhard to really step up, and even Miles Turner too. But these past couple games, we haven't seen that same level from the Indiana guys. I mean, Nembhard damn near literally threw the game away last game, where multiple turnovers, and that really set off this run for OKC. So, I mean, but SGA has just done such a good job, staying calm and just really waiting for his opportunities. And they were talking about, I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast, and he had Doc Rivers on, and Doc Rivers coached SGA his rookie year. And it was, SGA's just been, what Doc was saying was SGA, like nothing disrupts him. His flow, he's gotten to a level that he's just so talented that if you're going to press him, it doesn't matter what you do. He's still going to move at the same pace. You can't speed him up. There's nothing that you can do that will bother Shai. And yes, you can tell like Shai's, has got his hands on his knees. Like he's tired. Like you can tell he's doing a lot, but he had 4 blocks last game too. Like he's doing everything that you knew that you need an MVP to do. And he is showing that he is the most, the best player in this series. And I do think that, this was a good coming out party for this young OKC team, and a good coming out party for, like I've been saying, the next best potential duo in this league. So it's going to be scary for years to come if OKC gets the job done. But, Indiana still has a legit shot. I don't know about legit, but they have a decent shot at winning game 6. And part of me wants a game 7, not just for, game 7s are awesome, but I do think it would be cool to see these two teams go into game 7 in OKC, winner takes all. And, if Tyrese can compete in game 6 and just, stay upright and look, competitive, then, I think Indiana has a legit shot.
Yeah. The problem for me is you really don't see Indiana winning games in the playoffs right now without Tyrese having a late game impact or a big game in general.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that's concerning to me, going into this game 6 is it's an elimination game. You obviously know Tyrese is 70% at absolute best, probably more like 50%. And these calf strains are no joke. I mean, we've seen players play on these, and we've seen players, go down because of these. So this is a very real injury. So obviously he's not going to be full speed by any stretch of the imagination. My concern is, and I know they can do it, but how much can these role players step up? How much, production can you get from the rest of the team? And who is Pascal Siakam going to step up and be the true number one? Because to be honest with you, bro, like we've talked about this throughout the playoffs with the Pacers, we've played with the idea that they don't have a number one. Well, their number one's, Pascal Siakam. Well, at times it looks like it's Tyrese. Reality of the situation is, because we continue to go about this conversation over and over and continue to change our answers, the Pacers don't have a number one. They don't have a guy to go to, and a go-to guy in the clutch. They don't have like a DeMar DeRozan or a De'Aaron Fox, right? What they have is a great team that's able to put together solid plays when it matters most, which is awesome. That's phenomenal. But in a game 6, or any elimination game for that matter, 4, 5, 6, or 7, in any elimination game, you have to have your guy that is going to step to the plate and be like, we're not freaking going home. Like, I am going to do everything in my power to not let us go home. And we've seen that throughout the playoffs, for a number of teams through forever, right? You're seeing that out of Shai throughout this series. When they were down and, down in the series and then down in the next game, Shai took over, and he's done it countless times in this series. Indiana, I haven't seen like one true player take over. You've seen the spurts of guys. So for me, this game lies on Pascal Siakam. And that's really what it's going to come down to is Pascal, how productive, how good is he going to be? Is he going to be able to put this team on his back in the moments that matter most and get his team a bucket when, a run needs to be stopped or you need to continue digging into a run, right? And then on top of that, do the role players do their jobs offensively and defensively, especially defensively? Because I think if you're going to beat this OKC team this time, it has to be on the defensive end, which is wild to say, but that's really the best chance you're going to have if you want to be able to keep up with, with having a guy out there who's 50%.
Yeah, I like to call these dumb guy stats. Basically, like, there's stats that are true, but aren't technically a stat that, like, when you factor into the deep dive, doesn't matter. But Tyrese Haliburton, when he scores more than 20 points, the Pacers are undefeated. They're 14-0 in the occasions in these playoffs where he's hit 20 or more points. And for the Pacers, they've lost every single game in this postseason in which they have not scored more than 111 points. So, and they had 109 the other night. So it's one of those things where I do think defensively, Indiana's done about as good as a job as you can, given the mismatches all over the place for OKC. I think they've been gritty. You can only hope to contain Shai and Jalen, and hope that these other guys miss their shots. But that's been the issue, right? Is like all these role players are hitting their shots, and that's the other night, game 4. I think OKC only had made 3 3-pointers in that game, and they still found a way to win pretty convincingly. So I do think that Indiana, if they want to win this game, especially with a injured Tyrese, it has to go perfect for them. They can't have 20 plus turnovers again. They could, game 1 was one of the rare instances where they had 25 turnovers and they still won the game. That just doesn't happen in the playoffs in the NBA, and that's why the Pacers are such a weird team. But they really need to, and I do think playing a game at home in Indiana is going to help. I think the role players for Indy have been significantly better at home, and I do think that we could get a big OB game. We could get a big Mathurin game, or maybe TJ McConnell picks up where he left off, and maybe they trust him. They let him run a little bit more in this game. So there are avenues for which Indy can win this game, but I have this sense that OKC smells the blood in the water. I don't think they want to mess around. I don't think they want to mess around and have a game 7, even though it'd be an OKC type of thing. You want to just win the title and get it over with. And I just think that OKC will win tomorrow, but I do think that I will give Indy a chance. Like we talked about, it's hard to just count them out, but I just think OKC actually has it this time. During the series before the Haliburton injury, I had flipped super hard, especially when they went up 2-1. I was like, Pacers in 6, like they got this. And you're like, calm down, just wait. It's it's all going to plan. It's gonna be over. The NBA just wants to keep it close. But now with the injury, it just makes it hard for me to just say like, oh, they definitely have a chance. And even with the fully healthy Tyrese, the way he was playing, he needed to play better. And like we talked about, they don't have the number one option. It's hard to put all this on Tyrese. I don't think anyone's actually ripping Tyrese this series. He's made one of the biggest shots you can make as an NBA player. You set your team up for success. And he's not known to be this 30-point, 40-point guy like the other two guys he goes up against. But Pascal's been consistent, but he also hasn't exploded. Mathurin had the 27-point game, but can you ask him to do that again? And so those are going to be the things that Indy's going to be fighting, but it's at home. So you're at home and that crowd's been awesome. So, you're going to give them a fighting chance, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious to know. So let me ask you this. What would it take for you to see from the Indiana Pacers, does it just a win tomorrow night make you feel like they can absolutely win game 7, or do they need to like blow it out of the water? Like what? Because as it sits right now, the reason I'm asking this is, for me, even if the Pacers win tomorrow night, I think it's absolutely done OKC in 7 in OKC. I don't think there's any chance that Indiana wins, game 7, barring some crazy injuries, right?
Right.
What would it take for you to flip back to the Pacers and take the Pacers in 7, having watched tomorrow night?
I think the one thing with the Pacers that has always struck me is half the time when I was watching them in these playoffs, I didn't believe in them. And
I still don't.
And it was after these past couple series, I'm like, oh, they actually have some juice here. And I do think that they need to just win. I do think for me, if they win and all this context applies, we'll see how good Tyrese looks. If he looks bad and they still win, then that gives me even more confidence for game 7, the fact that they are able to win not at 100%. And that would, I think just the thought of that alone may be enough momentum to make people wonder and be like, oh, Indy might have a shot, even if OKC does, go back home and just beat the brakes off them in game 7. It's not like, I think all Indy has to do for me is to win. You can win by 1 point, game winner, it could be legit. But if you steal this game, because they've been underdogs all series, it's just the case. So you're going to be stealing this game, win or lose. So if you steal this game, I'm going to be pulling for you hard on game 7. But I don't know it. I'm pulling for them in game 6. If I'm making a pick, I can't see them beating them because I haven't seen this version of the Pacers, because Tyrese was hurt early in the year. He needed a lot of time to kind of get back into a rhythm, and they were struggling. So it'll be interesting to see. But Rick Carlisle is an excellent coach. You saw early in this series, I felt, and I mentioned it going in, that I trust Rick Carlisle, where that would be an edge over Mark Daigneault because of his experience. And there's been a lot of parallels to the 2011 Mavs with how Indiana's kind of done this thing under Rick Carlisle. So I will not be surprised if Carlisle has something up his sleeve for this game, knowing what we know about Tyrese now. But I got to give Mark Daigneault credit too, because he's done a good job responding. I thought, but I just need Indy to win, and I trust them to actually have a good enough chance. I know you haven't believed in them at all, and I think that's fair and warranted given the overall team. But I do think that Indy has stepped up in a way where they have turned into this completely different team. And that was the other thing that on the Bill Simmons podcast that Doc Rivers was talking about. He's like, only coaches, only teams that have been to the finals will truly understand this, is like when you get to the finals, you can ask any player, you can ask any coach if you're a different team now at this point in the finals versus when you first started the playoffs. And they will always say, we are a significantly different team. We found out more about ourselves. We're a better team now than we were entering this thing. So I do think that Indy has ascended during this, and even in this finals run, to a level where they can, and they have shown that they can compete at an OKC level, even when the cards are stacked against them the whole time.
Yeah, for me, I am kind of stuck. I'm in a weird place with the Pacers, and it might just be because I'm depressed. We don't have Tyrese anymore. I don't know, but a lot of it, if we ran it back right now, if we ran back this same season, no moves and injuries were different. I was the only thing that's different is like the injury history throughout this year is different. The Pacers aren't here, and
Agreed. I could say
that's
that.
kind
Yeah,
of
I
the
agree.
reality, right? So for me, I'm looking at this Pacers team, and yeah, the experience is cool. Yeah, it's awesome and all, but like you're still a lot of pieces away from making another finals run, I think. And that to me is like where I'm like, OKC's got everything in its bag right now. They've got every reason to be in this championship right now. They've got every reason to be there for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like this is where it feels like, men against boys in a lot of ways. And for me, a lot of the reason why in this series, no matter what happens, I haven't flipped. I've been like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we saw the Pacers go up 2-1. And I was like, holy crap, that's kind of crazy. But like, I'm not switching. I'm not switching. And you're like, it's Pacers in 6.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. I'm like, it's not. It's not. It's OKC in 6. So yeah, it's that's where I'm stuck at. And I've been like looking myself in the mirror about this now for a couple weeks, and really, evaluating it. Is this just a personal vendetta against them? Do I just hate the fact that they have Tyrese Haliburton? But reality is like what reality truly is, and that's that the Pacers running this thing back, they won't make it back to the finals, because reality is teams are going to get better this offseason, and Eastern Conference and Western Conference, and the injury history is going to be a lot different next year. It could be flipped. So to think that the Pacers could run this back right now, is tough for me, and that's why a lot of the reason why I'm like pulling for OKC, because it's like, you're going to be one of the top dogs. Why don't we just get one of your championships out of the way now? Since you were supposed to have that years ago before Durant jumped ship. But anyway, it's all good.
No, exactly. And listen, for both of these teams, it's going to be the first, no matter what happens. So it's going to be cool, no matter what happens. And we can Indy. I think, given all the injuries, I understand when we're going to talk about it. Some of the trades that have been going down and might go down, but the East feels as wide open as ever now. And I do think that, like you said, it's going to be really hard. Indy and OKC have managed to, up until, the Tyrese thing, walked into this thing unscathed, somehow made it the whole length of the way, fought all the injuries, and now everyone's healthy when it matters the most. And you are kind of just seeing the best of both teams. And I do think that, OKC has shown, hey, listen, like, we haven't played our best game for a lot of these games, and we've still have been in control. They've been plus 24 for the whole series. Like, they have been the better team. So, OKC has done the job, and all they really have to do is just play within themselves. Don't get dumb. Don't turn the ball over. Don't force anything. You guys have all the talent you need to beat the Pacers tomorrow. And that's going to be, like I said, I'm going to pull for Indiana. I'm going to hope for, I don't want to call it as dramatic as a miracle, but I want, I want a game 7. I do think that'll be a lot of fun. I think this series has been really good for the future of basketball. I think, people
Yeah,
can
for
say what
sure.
they want about the ratings, but like, for those who love the game and watch the game, this has been such an entertaining series about
Small
two.
market.
Yeah.
It's big for small markets. I mean, we're Kings fans and we're a small market team. And look at the guys who are in the finals right now. It's cool.
Yeah. And it just
Promise me.
shows that the league's in a spot where, especially now, I think you can turn around and say, if OKC is the most dangerous team next year, considering they keep most of their guys, like, yeah, that's an awesome team. But how afraid is anybody else of OKC? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anyone's going to say like, oh, we cannot beat this team the way like the Warriors teams or the LeBron led Heatles and stuff like that, where you're like, it's going to be, we have to play perfect to beat them. And I do think that come next year, depending on injuries and stuff, it could be anyone's chance to win the title, so long as injuries go the right way and all that stuff. So I think the league's in a really cool place. I think a lot of people are like, I wanted to see Steph and stuff, and like, I get that. Like, I get that you want your stars. They bring the ratings, but I don't know, man. I think these fan bases have done a great job supporting their team and making this finals as fun as can be. So it's been a good time.
Yeah, actually, that's that's a really good point. The fan bases on both sides, in Indiana and OKC, have been great to watch. The atmosphere has been incredible through the TV screen. I can only imagine what it's like in person. That's been, not necessarily refreshing per se, but it's nice to see. It's exciting. It gets you excited to watch, any of these, games going on. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is like two small market teams. It gives me hope. You know what I mean? Like, and especially
Exactly.
watching what OKC is doing. They didn't buy their team. They freaking drafted their team. Like, with the exception to a couple guys, right? Obviously, and one of their biggest hitters. But it's watching the development of this team and the process. This is the trust the process, not that crap that Joel Embiid was talking about years ago. This is the process. And OKC has freaking nailed it. And that should be like a blueprint, just like the Eagles in their offensive and defensive lines. This should be the blueprint as to how you build teams moving forward. Because you watch how this all went down. You watch the amount of picks. Like, it wasn't trading our guys for other guys to stay somewhat competitive. No. I want draft picks. Give me all these draft picks so I can beat your ass for another 8 years. Like, give me 4 years and I'm going to be top of the league for another 8. Like,
Yes,
that's what Sam did, and it's been incredible.
No, I agree. And like small market teams, like Sam Presti did this way, and I don't think it's a coincidence again that Indiana is also here in a very similar fashion. Like, they don't have any mammoth contracts. They have Tyrese and Pascal, but again, it's mainly guys on solid deals and rookie contracts. So it's like they're both deep teams because they have affordable players that are playing above their contract on their rosters. And I think and they both play a very similar style. They're not afraid to run 9 to 10 man lineups and not afraid to give you everything you have and go fast pace and attack you in multiple different ways. So I think, it'll be interesting to see how many teams kind of take that approach moving forward. I mean, you've seen teams like the Jazz try to do that for years and it hasn't really, culminated into a result yet. So it doesn't work the same for everyone else. You have to get lucky and hit on these picks. We talked about that. Same for the Eagles. Like, if they don't hit on some of these dudes, we're not, hoisting a Super Bowl. So it's the same thing for a lot of these guys. They're not here in the finals if they don't hit on their picks. And the
True.
Thunder nailed that SGA trade and said he's going to be the guy, and then we build around him. They did the right thing. Same with the Pacers and Tyrese. They're like, Domas isn't it? Getting in Tyrese, and we'll build around Tyrese. And now they're here. Back-to-back conference finals trips and a trip to the finals. So, it's been this. I love that it's these two teams representing the finals because of what they've done to get here, and hopefully that changes the whole. And it also is the same thing of like the whole 3-point shooting. Oh, you need 3-point shooting. You need to jack up 50 shots a game like the Celtics if you want to win a title. When in reality, you're seeing these teams jack up like 25 total threes each, a game. And it's mid-range. It's attacking in transition. It's good defense. So it's like, those are the things it's a win for small market teams, and it's a win for winning basketball, for a fun product where it's not just stand and shoot. So, I like that too.
Absolutely. So I've got OKC winning it, and I want OKC winning it. You've got OKC winning it, but you want Indiana to win it. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. And again, if Tyrese was healthy, I would have picked the Pacers, but I don't know how healthy he is. But Game 7, if because we won't be recording before Game 7. If Game 7, Tyrese looks good in Game 6, Pacers bring it to 7. I'll say it here now. I'm picking the Pacers to win Game 7. So so we'll lock that pick in here. But so it's going to be good. And and just a quick shout out to Random Stat for I didn't get to bring this up, but their defense OKC has been so good. But one noticeable factor was Chet Holmgren specifically in this series. Now, when you watch it at times, he's had flashes where he's been awesome and flashes where he hasn't looked that great. But the impact on the defensive end has been extremely noticeable. When he's on the court, they have a 100 defensive rating. And that would have been first in the league just in the regular season this year, but they were already the best defense to begin with. So it's, that they're awesome. But then when Chet's off the floor, they have a 118 rating. So
wow.
It's competitive still, but it's significantly worse with him off the floor in this series. And I think we've seen that when they try to go with Hartenstein or try to go small, where the Pacers do take advantage of that. But when Chet is in there, it's harder for them to drive to the rim. It's harder. Miles Turner is still struggling to attack him. And do some things. So it has been interesting to see Chet's growth. And I do think once he gets stronger, and this is his first finals too, so it's like he has a lot to learn and he's still so young. I think I saw some threads on Twitter where it was like, oh, do we need to have a conversation about Chet Holmgren after like game 2 when they weren't playing that well? And I was like, guys, like seriously, this is what we're going to do? This guy's going to, be a force in the league in the next 3 years. So it's whatever. But
he's also rolled his ankle like 4 times in this series alone. Like,
I thought he was going to be out after game 4. I think that's when it was. Yeah. So when he did that, I was like, oh no, there he goes. Like that's really bad for OKC. So
yeah.
But no, he's been awesome. Caruso's been awesome. Dort, like the way they've suffocated these Pacers, ball handlers, it's been impressive. Like they're forcing mistakes, they're getting in their head. Tyrese won't even look at the rim if Lou Dort is the guy guarding him. So it's been really impressive. And that's like the fact that Indy has gotten 2 wins despite all of these things kind of leaning in OKC's favor is a testament to, Indy's grittiness, but OKC has done everything that we anticipated they would do in this series.
I think it was game 4 when Dort had that insane late game block. I think it was on Nembhard.
Yeah.
That 100%, like, it got me off my chair, and I was like, wow, that was impressive. But it also solidified it for me just how suffocating this OKC defense is, and especially the OKC, guards. Mm-hmm. They're doing everything they are being asked to do on the defensive end. And that was really where it was like, yeah, I feel really solid in my pick.
Yeah, and Caruso did such a good job in game 1. I mean, he had 20 points there and was the only reason OKC was still in it at that time and staying alive because of his veteran experience. And you can see the finals experience all over Caruso and how many good plays he's been making too. So it's been the OKC just has the right mix of youth and veteran presence in there, and they have the MVP and the best, the second best option. They have the 2 best players in the series for sure. So it's like it's just hard for Indy, but they've done a great job. They've made it a great series. It was competitive every game, like you've said. Like it's been fun. So I'm hoping for a game 7. We'll see what happens. But if OKC clinches it, shout out to them. Congratulations. I'm sure we'll be talking about that next time we get on here. But we'll hope for an awesome game in game 6.
Yes, sir.
All right. So it's enough NBA Finals talk. We got to pivot over to, I guess it's going to ultimately be a Kings conversation, but it's more like a setup to our next Kings mm-hmm. conversation, because the NBA draft is next week. The Kings have a 2nd round pick this year, but no 1st round picks. But there's been a lot of reports coming out now that the Kings are interested in moving into the top 20 of the 1st round. Now, how we get there remains to be seen. There are definitely avenues for the Kings to do that, and we will address that next week. We're going to record on Tuesday next week before the draft, and we're going to have draft prospects, all that fun stuff. But some things that's kind of prevented us from going all in on this particular conversation is we wanted to talk about the news around the league that's kind of stalling the Kings from potentially figuring out what their next move is. And that first starts off in the form of Desmond Bane getting traded from Memphis to Orlando for 4 first-round picks, plus Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, because, Magic really wanted to get off that contract. But that was a really noticeable trade. It was basically the Mikal Bridges trade of last year, where you get a player who has never been an all-star, but he's an awesome contributor. You know what he is in Desmond Bane, and they trade him. Their Magic are saying we're going all in, and he's the missing piece that we need to pair with Paulo and Franz to set this thing up. And the Grizzlies get all this capital and say, hey, we're going to build around Ja and Jaren. And all of a sudden now they have all this capital to either build around or make an even bigger trade to make a big 3 for them, if that's what they want to do moving forward. What were your initial thoughts about that trade? Did it really do anything for you? Because obviously I know it's the Magic, they're the beneficiaries, but Memphis, this is a big move for them because Bane's been a crucial piece of that team for years now. So I didn't know if that swung anything one way or the other for you.
Yeah, it gave me a couple feelings, and my initial one was frustration because the Kings allowed themselves and allowed Monty to trade De'Aaron Fox in the midway point of the season when there isn't a bidding war. There isn't anything happening like that. You haven't had teams eliminated in the playoffs where they feel like they're a De'Aaron Fox away from contending. You know what I mean? So it was like, it feels like we missed out on what could have been a better package. I'm not going to say we could have gotten 4 first-round picks or anything like that, but
We could,
you know, I didn't say that. Anyway, but it was frustrating because it's like, what if, right? But then the other side of it for me was essentially what you just said a few minutes ago, and that's that the East is wide open, and Orlando definitely feels that way, and that's why they make a move like this. That's why you invest in a guy like Desmond Bane, because the last true point guard, not even that Desmond's a true point guard necessarily, but the last true point guard that Orlando's had there, Aaron Aflalo, how many years ago was that?
Yeah, I know.
Right. So it's kind of the same situation, but this is how long it's been since Orlando has had somebody that they can truly trust at the point guard position. And seeing, kind of what Desmond did and how he stepped up with Ja's absences throughout the years, I think they definitely feel like adding a Desmond Bane and having that solidity in their point guard position, their guard position, is going to elevate them to the next level, which they feel like they can contend. They're watching a team in Indiana right now who doesn't have any superstar per se. I freaking hate that everyone's just loosely using that word at this point. They don't have any superstars on that team, and they're in the NBA Finals. The only superstar in the NBA Finals is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I think absolutely this was a move that Orlando, call it what you want. You can say that Orlando overpaid, but they're absolutely reading the room in the East. They're looking around and saying, we can make it here. We have what it takes to make it. We have a similar build to the teams who are in the finals right now. We're more than capable. We just have a couple more pieces to land, and this was one of them.
Yeah, and I think, this is the argument when it comes to teams making moves for these kind of dudes, because when you think about Bane for the Magic, number one, he checks a need in terms of they were literally the worst 3-point shooting team in the league last year. And you get a guy who is instantly your best shooter, not even close, one of the best shooters, consistent shooters in the NBA since he's entered the league. He still shoots over 40%. So you get that quality of a player who provides a way to space out the floor for Paulo and for Franz. So all of a sudden you add that element to this team. And obviously, they're probably a rotational piece or two away from getting that full roster together. But you pair him with Jalen Suggs, you all of a sudden have a nice big lineup the way they love to play. And Bane, you don't have to sacrifice size. He's a very capable defender. So the Magic saw this opportunity and said, hey, we're gonna send it. We're gonna, this is a 2 to 3 year window for us to really just try and see if we can't go all in. And if worst comes to worst, we still pay Paulo, we still pay Franz, and then we can still build around them in their 30s, and it's gonna be fine. This is such a young team, and Paulo and Franz are still incredibly young, so it's easy for them to say, let's take a swing now. Let's get a vet in the building who knows what it takes in the playoffs that can maybe elevate this team in the East and give them a better chance. I agree that Paulo is a fringe superstar player who's just kind of wasting away a little bit in Orlando right now because they haven't had the same level of success. And I think that, Orlando's primed to make a big run next year if the Bane trade works out the way it does. And when we think about the Memphis side of things, I don't know how well it's going to work out for them. It'll, they still have a deep, talented roster, but the question is now, which direction really are they going to take it? Are they going to say full rebuild, trade everybody? We're going to just do a full OKC and start over and make this a 12-year thing where we eventually find our guys? Or do we package these picks that we just got, trade for another person or two that can elevate this team right back into contention over the next couple of years? So the Memphis Grizzlies are kind of in a power spot now with all these, capital. And listen, like, Orlando's a playoff team, so it's like you're not getting a lottery pick most likely for if you're Memphis. So it's like when you think about the price of these 4 picks, there are late first round picks, not top 5, top 10 picks. So that's when you kind of view it in a vacuum. You can understand why both sides did what they did. So definitely interesting to see what Memphis will do moving forward for sure too.
Yeah, for me, I don't think this move so much, had any effect on the Kings per se, as more so just like a what if kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we got to kind of watch out for with these draft picks that, or rather with trying to trade up into the draft here in the next week. And then if that doesn't happen throughout the offseason, is a lot of moves in this offseason are contingent on Durant and where he wants to
Correct.
go and where he's going to land. This is one of the biggest things that, we're going to be focused on, you and I think fans here need to be focused on as well. Pay attention to that situation, because how that shakes down will have a lot to do with where teams pivot, because the most recent rumor was a lot of teams feel as though DeMar DeRozan is a perfect pivot for missing out on Kevin Durant. So these teams who are interested in Kevin Durant right now feel as if he's the number one option. And if we don't get him, we have a plan B that we know is going to be on the table if we're within the right timeline and right time frame in DeMar DeRozan, who obviously wants out of Sacramento, hasn't necessarily said so yet. But both parties are interested in moving on, right? So he's out there, he's available, but he's not going to be moved until Kevin Durant's moved, I don't think.
Right.
And I don't think DeMar is going to be part of landing a, top 20 pick this year. He's not, basically what I'm saying is he's not going to be involved in a trade in the next week. I think if you see anything in the next week, it's going to be picks for pick. Not necessarily, but like, very reserve player or role player oriented. I don't think, like, at best, you might see Malik Monk on the move. You might see, a contract like that where it's not massive, but it's enough to, get a deal done where you're going to land yourself in a nicer pick. And obviously the most important thing is a first round pick. But the Kings are, per Sam Amick, the Kings are aggressively pursuing the point guard position. And they're exploring all options right now. They're, all over the place. We've seen so many reports of, going from Trae Young to, Drew Holiday to even LaMelo Balls. Like we've seen the run, and we're going to continue to see more of these guys. And so as far as landing a first round pick, we have guys that, we'll talk about next week, and I'm excited to break that down. And the Kings are actually, real quick before I say that, the Kings actually have hosted the most pre-draft workouts out of any team in the NBA right now.
Good. That's what we like to hear.
Absolutely. Well, you have like one pick. So,
yeah.
but it's also a reason to believe you're moving up, right? Because you're also, we'll talk about it next week. But the biggest thing, I got sidetracked. The biggest thing is like, this offseason, they have every reason to go out and go get a star level point guard, because at this point, you're not willing to rebuild. You said you're not willing to rebuild. You want to stay competitive. Well, okay, if you're going to stay competitive, you have to get a star player. You can't just get, a role player point guard and say, okay, we're good to go. Now we'll just, get some role players and solidify our depth and we'll be okay. No, it's not going to take that. If you want to be competitive and keep up with the Western Conference, you're going to have to go for a star level point guard. And that's going to take a number of assets from our team. So this is going to be an entirely different looking team, if I had to guess, going into next year. I'm curious to see what it's going to look like. We're obviously going to be there the entire step of the way. But, that's kind of my take initially right now is I'm watching these reports come out about the point guard situation and how much they are invested in that situation, how much they've been looking around. I'm hearing about all the, different, articles coming out basically saying that Scott Perry is looking at everything. He's evaluating the roster from top to bottom and willing to make moves that he absolutely feels like makes his team better. And another thing to keep in mind, he didn't build this team. He inherited this team. He inherited a dumpster fire of an organization. And they said, here, take the keys. We don't know what the hell we're doing. But you still have to run through us, but like we need some guidance. And this is where like we've had this conversation. We've seen this drill before. It's a new general manager inheriting an old team. He's not He's not going to run forward with this entire team. This isn't his team. This isn't his vision of a team. So to think that this team is going to be anything similar to what they were last year, I think is not dumb by any stretch, but I think it's probably not the best opinion, because just based on everything you're hearing, it sounds like Scott's ready to make moves.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about the Kevin Durant of it all, like you said, I don't think anything happens in Sac because we're the second option, right? Because our players, the Maliks and the DeMars, our team's second option to figure out different moves. And, there was rumors, Durant's just waiting on the right deal because, his preferred destinations are like San Antonio, Houston, Miami. But then there's the team in Minnesota who wants him and there was rumors they have the offer that the Suns are looking for, but Durant does not want to go to a cold weather team. If you even want to look it up on Google, if Durant likes cold weather, even Google knows that Durant will prefer to not play at a place specifically like Minnesota because the weather is cold up there, and he's just, as he's getting older, it's just tougher to be around cold weather, even though he was born in Maryland and is a Washington boy, but whatever, it's fine. But what matters here is the Bane trade gets in the way of these Durant negotiations, because Durant was top of mind. And all of the NBA media was Durant, what's his next move? He's going to be the first domino. And then out of nowhere, like it always happens every year, some random trade that kind of throws the balance of everything. Now it's like, oh no, did the price for Kevin Durant just change? And I think the issue was, I think the price for Durant hasn't changed. I just think all of a sudden it looks a lot worse for Durant. He's 37 years old. He's still a bucket, but to ask him to be your number one, complete option is just not reasonable. But now the question is, did the Suns have to lower their asking price?
Yeah.
Or does Durant care how much Phoenix gets in return, type of thing? Like, they're going to be doing this dance, and I think they want to try and figure out by draft day, so then they can readjust via the draft. So the hope for us Kings fans would be to hope that some news of any freaking kind with Durant happens before the draft. Because if that happens, no matter where he goes, it could be a West Coast team, it could be an East Coast team, doesn't matter. It will set up the first domino for all of a sudden opening up, okay, now these avenues exist for players who are available for trade. Now it's time to move DeMar. Now it's time to potentially look for suitors for Malik and them. There was a report that Perry was taking calls on everybody because I think he's learning the value of his guys. How much, what can he get for every player on this roster? So I think it's, like you said, I doubt that we see the same roster that we had last year rolling in. It would be extremely surprising, even after the draft, if nothing happens via outside of us getting a player, there's still going to be moves. So I just think that we're probably going to be seeing an adjustment in veteran presences. I wouldn't be surprised if they take a flyer on someone like Russell Westbrook or something like that. But it would be interesting to see. So as Kings fans, just wait to see what happens with Durant. He's going to be the first domino. And I'm going to say it now. I think Durant, the Suns will be lucky if they get 2 first-round picks for him. I think it's just because, like, who's trading 3 first-round picks or 4 even for Durant, plus whatever compensation you're going to need to match salaries and things like that? I worry that Durant wants to go to a team that has potential. Like, the Spurs are his number one option. I think Texas is his number one option, whether it's San Antonio or Houston, right? So both of those teams make sense because neither one of those teams need him to carry. They have the young talent to get rid of and also to just insert him, and it's going to be a perfect fit. But and even a team like Toronto, that's been a rumor as well, is that Toronto's trying to make this mammoth offer for him too. And I just don't know. I don't see a world where Durant gets that same level. I could be wrong. He'll probably get, he could get 3, but
that's the thing is, for me, 2 is the maximum and 2 is the minimum. I think 2 is the sweet spot, amount of picks, first round picks. I don't see 3. I don't see any less than 2. And that's kind of where I'm stuck at. And and that's keeping in mind you absolutely have to have the guys to, make the money work. It's just, it feels like first round picks and picks in general are just being thrown around right now because teams are, well, I mean, teams are reading the rooms, especially in the Eastern Conference, and they're saying we're X amount of pieces away. This is a massive piece for us. Contending is contending, and championships are championships. And that's all you're ever building for is a championship. I mean, that's why we play the game. So you absolutely take that kind of a deal. You make that kind of a deal happen. If you feel like you're that close, 4 first round picks, yeah, it feels like an overpay. But if it pans out and Orlando wins the championship next year, are we going to be talking about the 4 4 picks that they traded and being like, hey, they're so dumb?
Yep.
No, they won a championship. And that's part of why this, whole thing is, it's kind of funny to me. But yeah, this Durant deal is going to be interesting to see how this shakes down. It's interesting. I've been saying and feeling he's been wanting and probably going to end up in San Antonio. I've felt like that since De'Aaron landed in San Antonio because I don't know why, but forever I've felt like De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Durant were not a match made in heaven, but like a match inevitably to happen. And yeah, now that San Antonio has De'Aaron Fox, and also they've been rumored to have shopped him a little bit. Interesting.
Imagine they trade him for Durant.
That'd
That'd
be
be
so
so
funny.
insane. That'd be insane, bro.
but realistically, San Antonio is one of those teams as well that feel like they're a couple pieces away from contending, because at that point you get a Kevin Durant, you have a healthy De'Aaron Fox, a healthy Wembanyama, and you're like, wow, how do we stop San Antonio? Great question. If everybody's healthy, so it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes down. I'm excited. The next week is, I think we're going to learn a lot about the NBA in the next 6 days. I'm excited for it. We have our guys that we've been keeping an eye on for the draft, but it's really contingent on what we feel like the Kings are going to do come draft day or before draft day. So that's why we're going to try and save this conversation for next week as much as we can. I like the list. You and I have looked at the list of those pre-draft workouts, and there's a lot of guys on there that make a lot of sense for this team. And Scott Perry has been okay at drafting. He's had some hits and he's had some misses. But one thing for sure is the Kings do know how to draft guards. They've drafted some damn good guards in the past, 8 years. And unfortunately, none of them are here anymore. But they have a history of drafting good at the guard position. They've had misses, of course, but it gives you a little bit of confidence, especially if they feel like they need to pivot and they can get their guy in the first round, that they can build around at the point guard position, and also be, maybe a starter game 1, or maybe a starter, game 1 of next season, or the season after rather. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes down. I'm excited. Yeah, I love the draft, but wow, there's a lot that needs to happen before this draft even starts for us.
Right. And I do think an interesting part for the Kings fans this year is the fact that we're out of the California Classic. We're not going to be seeing our guys until whoever we end up drafting or whatever until Summer League. They'll probably have Devin Carter in there as well to get a more of a run type of thing. But it's going to be interesting to see, just kind of how the rest of this offseason goes, because this year in particular is so much unknown. And the fact that I think also the Mavs winning the lottery screwed all this up, because it's like, oh crap, we can be a play-in team and win the lottery. So it's like, it is a very interesting dynamic now of like, do teams decide to rush like kind of the Magic did? Do they want to rush their rebuild in hopes that they can take advantage of a weaker conference? Or if you're in the West, you just say, let's just run the table with the guys we have now, take the L's that we get, and let's hope we get lucky, and maybe we'll end up with the number 1 or number 2 pick and get a chance to jumpstart this rebuild or whatever retool we want to do. So it'll be interesting for the Kings how they approach it, because I don't mind addition by subtraction this year. I don't mind shedding contracts and maybe even playing under the tax this year, knowing that we can have room to build, whether it's via the trade deadline or via, in the next offseason. So this offseason is going to be a pivotal one for not just, the Scott Perry tenure, but for this next era of whatever the heck the Sacramento Kings are, because I think they don't even know what kind of era they're in right now. So it's a weird spot to be in.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, y'all. So I think we're gonna cut it off there. Do you have any final thoughts? Do you think, did you enjoy the Caitlin Clark fight the other day? That was funny. What did you think about that?
Jealousy is a hell of a drug, and that was what Matt George tweeted out. Got to give him credit for it, because it was 100% true. I saw that different angle of Caitlin just getting trucked.
Last shot,
I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, just because she's balling you all up, you guys got it's tough. It's tough, but she's tough, and to think that she's gonna let that affect her is funny to me. She's absolutely gonna go out with every intention to drop a 3 right in your face.
I do think it is interesting for the WNBA coverage of it all. I listened to the interview that they had with her post game after the game, and all they could ask about was the fight, was the thing, and she's like, "Can we please just talk basketball? Like, we're about to go to the, we're in the Commissioner's Cup, we're doing all these things, we just won this game. Like, can we talk about the game?" And it even took staff members from the Fever to tell the reporters, like, ask a question about the game before they even did that. And I'm just like, guys, you're hunting for this BS story that's not there. She's as professional as she could be about it. She walks away every time she gets punched in the mouth. It doesn't matter. Her teammates do all the fighting for her, which is hilarious. But I just think it's just an interesting dynamic. The WNBA doesn't know what to do with all the success that they've acquired with Caitlin Clark. She's their golden goose. They need to start adjusting. They have superstar calls in the NBA. They need to kind of start learning how to do that for the WNBA, for the top of the top players, because there are a tier of WNBA players who are a tier above their peers. So I just think I think it's interesting. But I think the more these incidents continue, the more of I don't mind the chippiness. I think it's awesome, but there is a level of like, hey, there, why are we shoving each other and stuff for no reason? You know what I mean? So
yeah, no, exactly. It was interesting to watch, and yeah, they're digging for a story that you're never going to get out of Caitlin, because she's going to save her words and take it out on you in basketball. Like, that's how Caitlin's wired, and that's why she's going to be an absolute killer for years to come.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was crazy to me, but yeah, brush it under the carpet. She'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think that we'll leave it off right there. This was a fun episode. It was good to be back. A week felt like a month. It feels so weird. Like, so it's good to be back with y'all. And for you guys who have stayed this long, if this is your first time, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate all the love and support. But this was episode 92 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. For all you guys watching on YouTube or any video, we got all of our links to the descriptions up above for our socials. For all you audio listeners, they are in the description below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, review, follow. Any comments you have. Do you guys think OKC is going to get the job done in Game 6? Do you think Indy has a fair chance? Well, let us know what you guys think. Plus, for all you Kings fans out there, what do you guys want? Do you guys want to make, do you want to move up in the first round? Who do you want to get rid of? Like, what are the changes you're hoping to see for the Sacramento Kings? So please let us know. Any comments. We appreciate all the love and support as we grow with you guys each and every week. As the football season gets closer, guys, like, we got some special stuff coming up, guys. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're really excited for it. A lot of juicy stuff to talk about in the off season. So next week it's gonna be Kings and draft, unless something in the NFL or NBA happens that's insanely crazy. So we'll stay in tune with that. But brace yourselves next week. It's gonna be a draft talk and review of the finals outcome. So stay tuned for that. We're excited to bring that to you. So with that being said, I'm Marcos Conan Negron. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jibret.
All right, y'all. We love you. We will talk to you next week. Peace.